Welcome, everyone, to a conversation where we're going to talk about venture capitalists and network building. Now, angel investors may be more aptly named than we can think. While venture capitalists put capital in capitalism, angel investing is really a different thing altogether. The checks frequently come from people's personal accounts rather than big funds. And angels often invest to make a difference or rather to support founders and ideas that they truly believe in. And we have one such angel investor with us who has invested in 55 plus companies. He's a member of the York, Spark, and GTAN Angels and Screening Committees, while being the driving force behind the Open People Network, which is a group of angel investors helping accelerate the growth of early stage startups through the Supporters Fund and Pitch It series. I'm talking about Jeffery Potvin, who is a lifelong entrepreneur with a proven track record of building companies and reinventing existing businesses, working with a list of great startups to enterprise clients over the years. He's a mentor, a coach, and loves to climb mountains. Let's welcome Jeffery. Jeffery, thank you so much for joining us here at the SOW Summit.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. So let's start by talking about OPN, which is, creating a community of sharing, of inclusion, of collaboration for growth and for financial success by bringing entrepreneurs, investors, and business leaders and even influencers together. Tell us a little bit about your mission with OPN and how did you restart this?
Well, it's sometimes you fall into things, I guess, interestingly, but it kind of became a long journey without realizing that it'd been a long journey. But when I worked in corporate 15 plus years ago, I worked for one of the largest retailers in Canada, which is called Loblaws. And I had this thing for an affinity to startups. I'm not too sure why, but I was a big fan. So I worked to bring a lot of those startups into the big corporate world. They would all reach out to me. The backstory is that I spent a lot of time working at the head office, and people would call in and they didn't know where to put them, so they would send them to me. So I would take hundreds of calls a week, a month, emails of startups looking to pitch Loblaws. And I worked with them on their pitch with the companies that I felt were a good fit, and then I helped them get in front of the senior level executives in the corporate side of business. So from there, I kind of built up a network of startups and business associates from that perspective. And then over the years, I continued to work with startups. I went into a startup, and then about 15 years ago, I decided to leave corporate and start my own company. So I started a software company where I continue to work with startups and help them work their way through the ecosystem. But it was kind of something in the background. I didn't realize that I enjoyed it and that I was doing it. And about 5 years ago, some of the investments that I had made had come to us and said, hey, we really could use some help with our funding. And I kind of thought about it, and then they came back again, and they came back again. And I know that I had been working with startups a long time. So I thought, you know what, why don't we create an event where we can help startups get feedback and work their way through the ecosystem? Because I found over the years of running my own company that the ecosystem was very tough to navigate when you were looking for funding. And there was very sporadic. People were all over the place trying to help, but there wasn't really anybody stepping in to really guide you through. You have big government side, angel groups, but nothing that really cohesively tied it together. So we thought we'd created an event, and we called it Pitch It TO at the time. And long and behold, 5 years later, we've run close to 100 shows or events. The events have anywhere between 40 to 400 people that attend. We have sponsors, partners from the city of Toronto to universities and colleges, Seneca College, York University, Durham College. So lots of great partners that have come in to help feed into the ecosystem. And from there, we started to learn a little bit more, and a lot more, I guess, if you will, about the ecosystem on how we wanted to play in that ecosystem. At the time, I was a solo angel investor and decided that I would join syndication, so join these other angel groups. And being part of those groups, the first thing I went to was the screening. I wanted to be part of the process that helped the startups get in front of the investors. I felt that that's where I fit best versus being in the big room. And from there, I was able to see what deal flow was coming into the angel groups, but on the other side, and help. Then on the other side, we were able to figure out how could we funnel and work with these startups to get them more funded or fundable. And in that process, we started to learn a lot of positioning. And the best part that came out of it is that we found that we slotted right in between accelerators, incubators, and angels and VCs. And the reason being is that these two entities, or sides of the bookshelf, I guess, each one of them had really good ways of helping startups get built and ready. And then the other ones were great at funding, but there wasn't anybody that was positioned to help them from an actual investment standpoint. So we wanted to be able to guide them through that investment. And the reason it became accessible to us is that we're made up of investors. So we could really coach and guide them through that position, I guess, to get to funding. And taking our experience on both sides, we were able to be part of that bookend on each end, and that allowed us to drive forward. So in that 5 years, we've been able to increase a lot of volume in speaking with startups. We average about 200 to 300 startups connecting with us a month. And then we vet through those in different programs that we've created, from E2E, which is entrepreneur helping entrepreneurs. So there's no ask other than entrepreneurs pitching for 2 minutes to share what they do. And we have companies all over the world. So our last event, we had 22 startups pitch from 7 countries. We then moved them through our cycle to our event called Skip the Line, which has become our #1 event due to COVID. We used to have a city hall event where we'd have 400 people on site. It was a very good marketing event, but because we've had to shut down, our Skip the Line event has stepped up because it's the pure investment. So we call it the largest syndication in North America because very few events are syndicated, and we syndicate our content to as many angel groups as we can. So in our last event, we had 9 Canadian companies, 1 US, with 5 Canadian on the panel and 3 global advisors. And what this does is that they have a 7-minute pitch, 10 minutes of Q&A, and the Q&A comes from the screening groups of all of these organizations. So they're able to pull the deal flow that they feel fits best for their group of investors. So we syndicate out to as many as we can. So we're on our end, we're working to not only work with the best startups and help them get through the ecosystem, but we're also working with a lot of investors to ensure that we're bringing the right content to help them get their investors excited about what's going on in the community. So in saying that, we support it by investing in 1 to 4 of those companies that we work with. We'd obviously love to invest in more, but financially and process and resourcing, we try to balance it out. And in the future, as we continue to raise funds into our fund and bring more angel investors into our community, into our fund, we hope that we can grow that so that we can continue to invest in more companies year over year.
So since we're talking about this, Jeffrey, can you tell us what are the different ways how OPN helps a great venture reach their funding goal?
For sure. So when we start working with a company, usually it's pre-seed and seed round companies. So they have probably have pitched before. I would say about 60% of the companies that do come to us are very new to this. So the great thing is that we can help coach them along, help them understand better their value. But the key factor of what we try to help them with is to understand their business. I think that a lot of startups feel that it's just common that I just stand up and I pitch. But I don't think they really understand what they're pitching. And you could say, well, you're just pitching your business. Well, a lot of the time, a lot of startups don't really understand what their business really is about. What is the actual story they're trying to tell? What is the end result? How are they generating revenue? How are they generating leads? How are they going to grow their business? Where are they going to be in 5 years? Can they be globalized? Can they go to other countries and sell their product? Or are they just going to be a small localized product or shop? And a lot of these things kind of have to be understood. And a lot of that goes around finance and other components. But once you understand the fundamentals of your business, that really is what allows you to grow your business. What am I really good at? What's the best thing that the business or the community is looking from me? And then that allows you to grow your business. So we try to help the business people or their owners better understand who they are and what they're trying to achieve, which then allows them to pitch their business 1,000 times easier, because once you understand what you're actually selling, then it's easy. You can do that in your sleep. So then it takes the pressure off you on what you're trying to sell and what you're trying to pitch. So it's all about the fundamentals. So once we help them through that, we help them with putting together their plans, but also their data room. So in order to pitch at Skip the Line, you have to have a full data room. I would say for an investment from our standpoint, maybe 60% there, but it's 60% further along so the other groups can help you finish what they require. But your pitch is 7 minutes of the best 7 minutes you've got. And it's going to help you impress the audience, but also let them understand more about you and your business. And that's key to all of this. It's not about, if a business person can't see through your pitch and they think, oh, it's a bad pitch, I'm not going to invest, then they're not the right investors. You're looking for people that can see through your pitch, can see through all of the details, and that's where you're going to get the win. And we try to help clean that up so that you do have the best, smoothest process to allow investors to see where you're going.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for explaining that seamlessly. Being a venture capitalist, Jeffrey, you surely encounter several companies and startups. And in 2020, you'll agree with me when I say that there seems to be a proven race for fresh ideas, whether it's exploring new geographies through your business, whether it's shared kitchen spaces, or for that matter. Can you tell us what are the trends that you've been noticing recently?
For sure. I think it's the trends are going to be, they're going to differentiate themselves by country, and I think by population as well. And in India, there's a very strong push for real estate, finance, insurance. And you guys have also built up a huge core of some pretty successful startups. And I think that like PayMeTM, like these types of startups really put the ground roots into the ecosystem. And now, and you also take the other side of what goes on in India, where you have a massive amount of engineers that are graduating. And when you have that big number, you have a huge success rate of startups going into that type of space because of the background and the education style. So I can totally understand in the size of population that you're going to have a huge push into real estate and trying to clean that up. You're going to have a great trend in fintech where there are going to be a lot of products that are coming out to help support population. And as the world starts to shift into being more green and to dropping a lot of the old ways of doing things, a pandemic has made that change, but so did the financial crisis. And before that, the stock market bubble crash. All of these things have created opportunity. And the opportunity is that now you have a moment to sit back and start to dream about where I could be. What experiences have I learned from that are going to allow me to change the world? And that's what the best part of these downturns are, is that it allows people to refocus and find things that they didn't have time to do and realize that they had been doing things for a long period of time, like helping startups, and didn't realize that this was such an awesome venture to get into. So now you're starting to see a lot of that change. Venture capital is growing, funds are growing. There's a lot of impetus put on this category because of COVID. Before this, there wasn't a lot, right? I think there was still a lot of players coming into early stage companies, but the risk level is so high that it hadn't changed much. And I know that in the Indian policy, they've changed a lot. So they started to get behind startups, I think 5-6 years ago, and we started to see it because we get pitched a lot from Indian companies, which is amazing. But you guys have kind of really pushed that forefront. So women founders have grown. So I think you're going to see a lot of change in startups that are coming in, not just in certain categories, the ones that I mentioned, but you're also going to see female founder changes from 5 years ago being at 9% to now 14%. Like a lot of that shift changes the types of companies that you're going to be faced with. And that creates more excitement. And I think that there's a lot of great pieces that are coming out of it. In Canada, the world's made up of 97% of small companies. In India, it's close to 30%, 29-30%, and that's growing at a 15% a year. So you can see that because the world's shifting from big corporate, opportunities are going to come out. ways to fix problems are going to start to bloom. So I think that trending wise, you're always going to be, health tech is going to be a big one because of the changing landscape. Fintech, as you mentioned, and you guys are well adversed in fintech. I think the other one that we're starting to see a lot of, and this is again changing because of the environment, you have gaming, sports, all being pushed online. And all of these things are taking away from the way they used to do things. So I think that you're going to start to see ways that are being reinventing big properties, malls, sports facilities. How are these things going to be changed so that they can start generating dollars and revenue? They're just sitting assets right now. And the last thing anybody wants to do is to see something be decrepit and fall apart. So what are they going to do to drive people, drive commerce? So at the end of the day, it's always about the commerce ability. And then the other one I think is food tech. Food is pretty prominent in every country. It's a needed asset. And I think that you'll see a lot more coming out of that. And I've seen some great companies coming out of India in the food tech space as well, from freezing products to shipments, a lot of trade. So there's a lot of great sectors that are building up, and you'll see more of it come out of COVID.
Fantastic. So you have, of course, a proven track record of not just building companies, but reinventing businesses. I think everyone that's watching us right now, Jeffrey, wants to know what kind of companies and founders are you looking for?
You know, I love this question because it's being able to look into someone's eye and seeing that one little thing that's that driving factor. And I kind of think it's called, or at least I coin it as being someone that's psycho about their business. And I know that might be the wrong term, but when you have somebody that really is so driven by their business, those are the people that interest us, because at the end of the day, they're going to do what it takes to win, grow, and build that company. And why I say that that's important is because they'll understand the environment, they're going to understand other competitors, and they're going to understand it better than anybody else. And they're going to eat, breathe, and sleep that. And why is that interesting? Because that allows that person or that business to pivot, change, and grow as they see the market shift. So COVID to them would be an exciting challenge. They'll look at that and say, how am I going to pivot my business to win? And we've got lots of companies that we've invested in, and you can see that in the owners. You know, day 4, they've already pivoted and changed, and they found that their businesses are generating 40% more revenue. Well, that didn't just come because they had nothing to do that day. It's because they are so entrenched in what they're doing. They believe in themselves, they believe in their team and their business, and they're going to shift and change the way they need to. And that comes from working internally with their advisors, their mentors, their coaches. It's working with everybody to come up with that new plan and being able to pivot quickly. And having a great team and support system is what's going to help that. So we look for companies that are supported. And if they're not, we want to help them get supported. And doing that just means that we try to help them understand their roadmap. You know, how can I build my company? Do I need to bring advisors in yet? Or can I wait a year? Do my numbers meet the growth patterns that my team should be growing at? And a little bit of these things are always going to help, but it really comes down to a strong founder and somebody that's really driven to understand it. And to me, it doesn't matter your culture, your background, if you're male or female. We just love rock stars and people that are dedicated and driven, and we support everybody, because at the end of the day, if we can help everybody succeed and win, it might not be on their first company, it could be on their second or their third, but we're going to be there to help them, and we want them to win. So I think a lot of that is the focus for us, is looking for real dedicated, driven people that have a great idea or a great process in business that we can get behind and help support.
Well, thank you for sharing with us, you know, those personality inherited or inherent traits that you're looking for. So Jeffrey, you've been associated with the Startup Pitch program at SOW. I was just curious to know, what are some of the observations that you've had about Indian companies so far?
Well, over the years, what I've found is that working with Indian companies, they're very dedicated. They really do love what they do. They're very supportive and driven, which is great. And I think that the other things that have come out of it is that they are quick at pivoting. So I think they've learned that in order to survive, I have to shift and keep going till I find where that that dollar is and where I can get that customer that's going to continue to work with me and grow with me. I found that was very admirable, because a lot of the times people don't pivot fast enough. And if they don't, they tend to fail. And I think that in a country of India where you have a very large population, you learn to pivot, change, and grow. And I think that some countries in the world don't tend to get that type of learning. And I think that that's what really sets India aside, is that you guys know when, I wouldn't say you as a general, everybody, but in a good amount of companies we've worked with and talked with, they move quick and they figure out ways to shift and change to get to where they need to be. Very adaptable. They learn from what's going on in the environment. And because there are such a magnitude of startups globally, but in India, I think that there's a very good understanding of where they fit in the ecosystem and how they can drive it out. And I do believe that a lot of companies have learned from the exposure that they've been given by Paytm. Like, I think that those business owners have really shifted the way the mindset works for a lot of startup founders in India. And I think with a lot of the incubators and accelerator growth that's happened in India, I think that there's been a new one starting every year. I think the stat was something around 11% growth, which is phenomenal. Whereas in other countries, it's drawing down because they're oversaturated. Whereas in India, there's a lot of support vehicles coming out. And I think that to me is crucial for any startup to be able to have incubators, accelerators, universities, mentors, people to help them get through the tough spots, but to best see value. So I find that the support of the government and all of these entities coming together has really helped the startups in India, and it makes a big difference.
Thank you for sharing those observations, Jeffrey. I think almost every founder or entrepreneur that's watching us right now, it's virtually every startup's goal to go global at some point. Can you tell us, shed some light on what do Indian startups need to be global ready? What are those critical pointers that they should be considering?
For sure. I think at some point, a lot of companies, when they start off, they will, if they're in retail or they're in doing commerce transactions, a lot of the time they will have exposure and access to global markets where they'll be selling their goods. They're predominantly going to be focused on one country. And I think that it's the same thing if it's a product or a service, that you should focus internally on what's low-hanging fruit, what's easy for you to access at the time. So what I mean by that is, if you're in Bangalore, which is, again, one of the fastest growing tech sectors in the world, if you're in this city, figure out how to dominate in your market, grow. You don't need 40 products in order to get in a market. That wastes your marketing dollars, that reduces your resources. I think it's just focusing on sales and delivery, winning customers over, growing that MVP into a great product. And then after you've really mastered that product, you've grown, then start to look at regions that are going to accept and want your product. And that could be outside of Bangalore, it could be going into other states. But then from there, you got to start expanding. So you could be in year 2, year 3, year 4, and start expanding into other countries. Find partners, find ways that you can get into those countries with quick movement. A lot of the time, it sounds overbearing. It sounds like it's going to be a lot to process, but there are a lot of people that needed your product in the location you're in. There's probably just as many, if not more, in other countries. So start to figure out what that plan is to expand. Obviously, if you're being funded, you could be doing this in year 1 and year 2. But if you're not as funded at the beginning, find ways to de-risk your business and start to get wins right away. Globalization is great, but a lot of these companies that we look at and think that they're amazing because they're global and they're doing successful things, they haven't just been around for 2 years. They're a 10-year-old, 20-year-old company that's just started to get the change in limelight. So how do you position yourself to make sure that you can get to that stage? Even Paytm, I think it was 2010 they started. So in 10 years, they have really globalized themselves, but that took a lot of investment and a lot of people behind that engine. So you have to do the same thing with your startup. Plan a year or 2 out, and then start planning further out and find when you're going to take those investments dollars in, so that you can continue to support and grow outside of India. And that's going to come by numbers. It's easy to pull everything in your own country, How do you start doing it in the US? Start going to bigger markets. And I think that that's everybody's dream. But if you plan it out, you'll get the right strategic partners and team members. You're going to be able to execute that.
Absolutely. That's true. So, a decade ago, Jeffrey, the Indian startup ecosystem had less than 50 angel investors, whereas today we boast of angel investments from more than 2,000 plus angel investors. What, according to you, lies ahead as far as the future of investments in India is concerned?
Well, I think that's amazing. And we've actually been talking with a few recently Indian and angel investors, and we've heard great things from them. Super excited, building large funds. The great thing is that there is a lot of cash, if you will, in the Indian system that's being deployed from governments, banks, very well supported. And it's helping these investors build funds that are helping reinvest into the community and investing into these early stage companies. So because it's early on, I think what you'll probably start to see, and hopefully, is that with the growth of accelerators and incubators and businesses helping, that as you start to see exits occur, that those founders will start to give back. And they're going to take those dollars and start to reinvest them and start to invest in early stage companies themselves. And this cycle will continue to grow. And that's what's going to build the ecosystem in India, is that once you really hit it off with a lot of great startup companies that take global investment and grow and sell, that those founders start to give back to the community. Some of their executives that were part of that business will now be have liquid or cash, so they can start reinvesting. So the cycle continues, right? And you start to help others grow and build their companies. And you see that a lot from Silicon Valley and even in Toronto, the tech sector, that because of the growth that they've had and the exits, that a lot of those founders are starting to go back into the community and give back and help others get to where they were. And I think that's the best way to recycle finance and investment opportunities to help a community or a country grow. And I think India fits into that perfectly. You guys actually should be at a catapult in front of everybody because of the population size and the amount of startups that are growing every year. I believe that there's 1 to 2 startups in the tech space starting a day in India. So just think of the outcome that's going to come from that when those companies start merging and exiting, the dollar that's going to benefit from that.
That's going to be incredible. So you've said such encouraging things, Jeffrey, about startups in India. What's your one big advice to Indian startups?
I probably could spend an hour on advice of things that I've seen over the years, but I think that the biggest, I guess, driving force behind anything is that if you're passionate about something, be passionate, be psychotic, driven. Those I think are going to help you move forward. But I think always have a clear vision of where you want to go, and then being very, very, very open to input and seek input. I think a lot of times, and this isn't just Indian-based companies, this is globally, I think sometimes our passion blocks our view from what we're trying to get to. And I think you have to be really open-minded to take a lot of feedback and break that down to pieces that are executable, that are going to benefit you and the growth of your company. Everybody wants to be a startup, but if you can take that back and understand that I want to be a startup for this year, next year I want to be a mid-tier company, I want to grow, then that takes me out of startup phase. So I have to take as much input as I can to grow my company so that I can be larger. I have 10 employees, 100 employees, and I can grow my base. And that means that I have to take in a lot of value from other people. And the value exchange is huge. The more money I help someone else make, the better off I'm going to be in growing. So as a startup founder, we have to do the best we can to take in critical feedback and convert that into little executables that will help me drive my business, and find the right people on the team that support you and your vision, your dream. And that goes all the way up to your board of advisors, your directors. Find the people that support your dream and visions. But I think that there's a lot of things that we can share about what it takes to be a startup founder and what it takes to grow a business. But the number one piece is always going to be sales. So I think if there was 2 pieces of advice, I would say be open-minded and learn from other people and always be asking questions. And the second thing would be sales, sales, sales. Not a
Sales.
lot of founders enjoy it, but you're not a business if you don't have sales.
Absolutely, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. I think this conversation has been extremely encouraging. It's, taken all of, I'm pretty sure it's taken all of our audiences to see the brighter side. And I think even as investors grapple with the dynamics of, the changing economies globally, one thing is for sure that they're still open to invest in startups seeking funds for the very first time, or they're open to lay their bets on entrepreneurs with a proven track record as long as you are passionate and you know exactly what you're talking about. So thank you very much, Jeffrey. This conversation was absolutely incredible. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
100%. I appreciate your time, and it was lovely speaking with you. I enjoyed the questions, and I'm excited to see what's coming in India next. And hopefully we'll be there as well. And we look forward to the rest of the event and being able to connect with a lot of great startups. And just as a side note, we've already been talking with lots of SOW startups, which is exciting. So you guys are doing a fantastic job, and we're 100% behind it. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you.